Well, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. We begin with the National JAMHURI Day celebrations today, where Kenya is marking 62 years since independence in 1963. With this year's theme focusing on tourism, a sector the government says remains key to economic recovery and national development. Well, President William Ruto will be leading the celebrations here at the Nyayo National Stadium in Nairobi, where Kenyans have already started gathering for the annual parade and official address. The government is expected to outline new measures aimed at boosting tourism, perhaps improving infrastructure, as well as issues of economy, and also promoting Kenya as a competitive destination regionally and internationally. We have our reporters across the country following the day's events, from the coast to the Rift Valley. We have from Western, as well as right here in Nairobi. We'll be capturing how different regions are marking this year's celebrations. Of course, those are live pictures coming to you from the Nyayo National Stadium. We see that the preparations are taking shape there. Kenyans, we understand, had already started streaming into the stadium since the early hours. Security teams, parade units, finalizing preparations ahead of the official program. It's 8 minutes past 7 a.m. We'll also be joining our team on ground there. Ival Rugal as well as David Mudoka will be giving us details of how these last-minute preparations are ongoing ahead of the official program. And of course, we see that inside the stadium, decorations featuring the national colors have already been put up. Various performance groups, we know as usual, cultural troops, bands, youth representatives are assembling as they wait for their scheduled appearances. Today marking Kenya's JAMHURI Day, of course, a national holiday commemorating the country's independence and a transition into a republic. But that official ceremony is expected to begin mid-morning, and we'll be following up on the proceedings bit by bit, minute by minute, of course, giving you a 360-degree coverage of the events. But I'm also not alone in studio. I am joined by Arnold Maliba, who is the party leader, Progress Press Alliance. We'll also be joined later on in the panel by Bigambo, who is a governance analyst and political communication strategist as well. But Arnold, a very good morning to you on this JAMHURI Day as we celebrate yet another year of our nation as a republic. But when you look at it, Javas, when you talk about independence, what does it mean for you? And what does it mean for the Mwananchi 62 years later?
Good morning and happy 62nd JAMHURI Day.
Right.
I think we've gone through this process for a while, especially those of us that are now headed into middle life. And probably now it looks like it's routine. But where did we really come from? And why is it important to mark this particular day?
Right.
Over time, of course, as a country, I think we've tended to look down, or rather water down history and get by, because sometimes life can actually be very busy. But then, of course, at some point, Kenya as is today, didn't exist, at least in the construct of how we governed ourselves. We lived independently as different communities and different people. Then somehow, as the world changed out there, we weren't very much prepared. And some individuals came here and told us that they had a better idea on how we would govern ourselves. Initially, we were naive enough to actually allow them to settle, because Africans have always been warm-hearted. And over the years, you'll realize that they have opened doors to so many cultures and so many people. So the white people came here at the beginning of the 19th century and took over. Before what we thought was just people roaming around, looking at rivers and looking at mountains, ended up being a regime that took over. And for about 50 to 70 years, for most Africans, in some instances it was 100 years, they were under colonial rule. And their way of life, our way of life, was actually changed forever. things changed completely. But sometime after the Second World War, our people realized, especially those who went to war, they realized that these white people are not really supreme. They are not different. They are not the gods we thought they were. And that when we were in war with them, they were shot, they died, they cried, they crumbled, they fear. So it's not like they're very different. That's why, like in places like Kenya, you know, the difference between we people in Kenya and the people, our neighbors, including some of those neighbors that make a lot of noise, is that we fought for our independence. They negotiated theirs. So we are not literally the same. So sometimes when you are proud to be Kenyan, especially when it's about local rivalry on the block around here, just remember that we fought for our independence. Our neighbors...
And it was a brutal war.
And it was a long, brutal war. Our neighbors around here spoke their way throughout. Walipiga Kiswahili mpaka wakafika kwa independence. But be that as it may, what really is Jamhuri Day for, away from what we've been told in the narrative, is that, you know, what we had was actually despotism. Colonialism is despotism. There is no other word for it. And here is despotism that is actually, has got a sprinkling of a monarchy on it. That a queen we didn't know, a king we didn't know, somewhere had sent some despots here to rule over us. So colonialism was despotism. We wanted a republic. And that's why when we talk about Jamhuri, Jamhuri is the word for republic. So the republic here is very basic. It's about four things. That number one, you move sovereignty back to the people. So you have got popular sovereignty that is then rested upon the people. Then there is the other bit, is about the rule of law. These are terms that when we were young and we were being introduced to Jamhuri Day and why we fought for independence, they really don't come out well. But then after popular sovereignty, that is the people, and like Article 1 of the Constitution says that all sovereign power belongs to the people. That's the whole essence of why we fought for independence. But that is not enough. You will need the rule of law, you will need accountability, and of course representation. Here, representation is actually for the benefit of all, not just a few. Those are the four core reasons why the people that wanted self-rule were after. The people that wanted us to become an independent republic were out for. It's not changed. Of course, there are a lot of things that we promised each other. At independence, of course, the founding fathers spoke about the three enemies being poverty, disease, and illiteracy. That was the manifesto. But the real idea on why we wanted to rule ourselves was so simple. We wanted the majority to take care of their interests. That's a popular sovereignty. We wanted the rule of law because the people that used to sit in Legico, literally it's like they used to pass bylaws. Everything else was decided elsewhere. So it's like the guys that sat in the Legico largely passed what I would actually look at as bylaws. So we wanted the rule of law.
Right.
We also wanted accountability because when the colonialists were here, they were not accountable to us. They were not even accountable to the Legico. They were only accountable to the profits, the capital they were serving, and the crown that had actually protected them here.
So self-interest.
Yeah, so the place of accountability and of course representation. The people that were there a lot of times were literally, they came into these places, picked a few people, made them chiefs over us, not the way our people will do it. So at the technical level, that is exactly why we are here today.
So let me ask you.
Yeah.
We've, you know, the history is long. The history is long, and there were many reasons as to which Kenyans, and especially those who went to take up arms to fight for the independence of our country. There were issues of representation, there were issues of exploitation, land rights, and all these things. Do you think Mwananchi today connects to the ideals and the ideas that we had back then at independence? Or has things changed? So,
and that is why I actually took the technical approach, because I wanted us to have a matrix where we can actually compare. Like the very essence of a republic is popular sovereignty. That sovereign power belongs to the people. It rests with the people.
Right.
Do the people of Kenya really feel that today the people that are governing them have the legitimate right to be doing what they are doing today? You know too well, if you were to check around, of course, because it's a democracy, You know, and this is a representational democracy, not a pure democracy, because if we went to pure democracy, then it means that the majority will always have their way, regardless of what the minority are. And I have always insisted that Kenya is actually quite a difficult, or rather a very different bowl of fish. Because a lot of people do not know that all the Kenyan, or rather, all the native groups in Africa actually gather here. And they gather here almost on a native basis. Of course, there is the Out of Africa story, where if you go to Turkana, we talk about that being the cradle of mankind. But then, realistically now today, if you were to look at our demographics, not so many countries have got the mix and match that we have. It is something that we really need to start talking to it, so that then we realize how different we are and how well we have actually done as a people. Because a lot of what we have today is not really the doing of our leaders, or the deliberate policy actions. Kenya is largely where it is today because of the individual efforts of Kenyans who wake up in the morning and decide to make it better. Otherwise, we have got so many reasons to actually wake up in the morning and refuse to either proceed with the way things are. So, does the sovereign power really rest with the people today? The truth is that it doesn't. It doesn't because, number one, as much as we have got regular elections, we sometimes do not go to elections and really choose. We do not have true choice.
Why do you say that?
Let's start from a place. And here we are discussing sovereignty, the whole idea ya kujitawala. Today, even on the media, even as we discuss here, the media will only summarize the choices people have in the next 2 years to two options. In a country where you have over 1 million people who can become president today, if you discuss 2027, it's being duopolized, and people are talking about either President William Ruto, the current administration, which is status quo, or somehow the narrative has actually been formed, or the Wamunyoro team. Really, is that all the option we have? No, but somehow, in logic, especially when you're doing debate, in logic there is the fallacy that we call the false dilemma. Somehow, people are being told, now, if it's not William Ruto, do we really have another choice? Do you know that is a false dilemma? We are not helpless. But somehow, the electoral system, our body politic, has actually been rigged. That somehow people actually sit out there and they believe that as we go forward, we only have got two options. It's a lie. Because number one, even if it were political parties, we have got 92 political parties fully registered. Several hundreds probably are under registration as we speak at a provisional level. But you see, that already, so when you go to make a choice where a choice has already been shrunk for you, do you know that if you chose to vote for Wajakoya, Kurokot, or even vote for me for president, it will still count? But somehow, it's been rigged in your mind. Now people are actually feeling like they are helpless. If you look left, you see the Wamnyoro, or rather you see Rigathi. Even though you know that legally probably he might not even run, but somehow that is the narrative. So even learned and educated people feel like it's a helpless situation, which is not true.
All right.
So that is just on sovereignty alone. So does it really rest with them? Not so much. That is why in 2024, young people went to parliament. Why? What were they doing? It was a protest because representation is core. So when they went to parliament, ransacked it, they were taking away legitimacy because they felt that representation is not working. And
there were core reasons as to why people went to the streets. The young people, the Gen Zs led those demonstrations then. From your perspective, you know, there have been many accusations leveled against the government because of failure to do make good of the promises they made when taking over office. But realistically speaking, you know, we're looking at some of the things that have shaped the day-to-day experience of ordinary Kenyans. One of those things, of course, is the cost of living, even away from politics. You know, when you listen to many Kenyans right now, Arnold, they tell you, I really don't care to even vote in 2027. I just want to be able to get some disposable income. I want some purchasing power. I want money in my pocket. I want proper education. I want better health care. I want, you know, good services, good roads, water, you know. And to be able to afford these things, realistically speaking, 6 to 2 years down the line, where are we on that?
And that is why it will be, today will be a very good day for us to actually just do an open heart surgery on the Republic, as it were. So I've spoken about sovereignty. You are talking about how people feel, especially when it comes to exercising their democratic rights, which in another word is simply them exercising sovereignty. So when people feel like they cannot vote, probably we need to compound this conversation and look at it in a much better way. Sometimes I would rather go the data way, because data has a way of trying to actually get the fog out of it, because normally you cannot win against fog. You don't know where you're going. So look at 2017. In 2017, we have got over 15 million people voting. I want us to start from very far. So in 2017, 15 million plus Kenyans end up voting. In 2022, 1.2 million people do not show up to vote. It's something that we've never sat down to actually ask. What made 1.2 million people not to vote? Because demographically, you would see that if in 2017 this number of people had registered to vote, the projection was that the number of voters was actually going to go higher in 2022. So we even registered more voters in the lead up to 2022. But the people that turned up to vote in 2022 were 1.2 million less than the people that voted in 2017. So the voter turnout moves from 79% to 64%. Does that speak about how people then were feeling about the democracy? Is that how were people feeling about this republic when you have got 1.2 million people not showing up? Ordinarily, because numbers have been increasing, the projection, our population growth has been that, and we still expect that even in 2027, we should, number one, have more registered voters, and therefore, consequently, you expect that we will have at least the number, the absolute numbers going higher. So here, we had even much lesser people turning up to vote. So speaks to the same thing that you've actually pointed out, that sometimes Kenyans feel like, I don't care what is happening out there. I just want to take care of of my basics. That is a good argument. But the whole idea is that people fought for independence because the right to self-determine was very, very important. So the few, for whatever reason, that are not happy probably speaks to giving up. Is the democracy decaying? Is really the state, or rather the republic, living up to the expectations we had? And like I said, no.
Are you saying we're worse off than where we were in 1962? If
we were optimistic with the republic, that we wanted the republic so bad that, unlike our neighbors, we fought for it. And you know, it's important, I say this, it's important to remind Kenyans that one of the reasons why we are special even in the region, you know, people say nationalism is sometimes toxic, but then one of the reasons why we actually are special is that, unlike our neighbors, we did not negotiate for independence. We fought for it. So, but how then has it moved that over time, the urge and the hope that we had in the republic declines to the point that people no longer feel like it's worth going to cast the ballot? For me, I'll tell you, JAMHURI is about that one thing. I told you, it's generally for me, four things. You're looking at a popular sovereignty lying with the people, you're looking at the rule of law, you're looking at accountability, and you're looking at representation. People largely have got issues with the people that represent them. That you cover here every day. Kenyans are so much, have really given up on their representatives. Nothing actually explains that better than 2024 and June 25 specifically. People, really, the issues of accountability, literally most of the news you cover here are about complaints to do with accountability. It's about the Auditor General has said this, it's about people that are trying to do one thing or the other. It's continuously there are those issues, and therefore you would understand when a Kenyan tells you that I don't think it's important for me to go vote. Okay. Then the rule of law. Basically at the core of that, of course, we're talking about the Bill of Rights in our constitution in this particular instance. We have got lots and lots of complaints to that. That one of those things that we actually are not so safe is that a typical Kenyan is not safe from government repression. we are not safe from the state, the very one that should be accountable to us. And then, of course, vote. People are always complaining. Of course, technically, you will say in law, it's impossible to rig an election, that we are exercising our right. But I've just demonstrated to you today, a while ago, that in a country where you have got literally almost everybody in this studio now can actually become president. But once you start to speak, you realize that the electoral ecosystem limits the choices.
All right.
Or based on two things. Number one, money.
Okay.
And because the politicians we have become agents of capital owners. So literally, it's capital owners that are twisting how our political actors go out there. So for whatever they do, it can be coached in very good
and we'll come back, Arnold, to the political ecosystem in the country. Like you said, we have to do an open heart surgery to understand where we are as a nation. Allow me to also introduce Javas Bigambo is also joining us. Thank you so much, Javas, for making time for us this morning as well. As we dissect where we are 62 years later as a nation, there's an image behind you. I don't know if you can just have a look. It's a very profound moment there. Mzee Jomo Kenyatta picking up the instruments of power for this nation. Certainly, we've come from far, from the time we were under the colonial administration, and of course the fight for independence, the emergency period, the Mau Mau uprising, and of course it's been a tough journey. But 62 years later, you as a Kenyan, Javas, where do you think we are? What is your assessment of where we are?
Thank you, Zainab, for this invitation on this very calm and hopeful morning as we celebrate the country's 62nd Independence Day. And as I walked in, of course, I heard my great friend and relative Arnold Maliba pontificating hopelessness and speaking to the effect that we have not made strides that we need to celebrate. And Arnold Maliba is a great man. He's a potential grave digger. He's a friend I celebrate, and he's well-spoken and well-educated. But one thing I wonder about my brother Maliba is that why is it that he never sees hope where there is some? I say this because, as a matter of fact, Zainab, we've come 62 years. 62 years. 62 years. And in these 62 years, we have walked a terrain that is not straight. The meanders of governance, of institutions. And I say that in these 62 years, Zainab, there is so much to celebrate, there is so much to be grateful for. Because what we have today is not what we had at independence. The journey that our founding fathers and mothers, the journey that they walked, the hopes that they had, the desperation through which they lived is not what we see today. And when you look at all these things, my brother Maliba would appreciate that his father and his grandfather, if they were to sit on a table such as this to share perspectives, they would tell him that we have got so many blessings to count. So on this 62nd morning of our Independence Day, don't tell me that we don't have blessings to count. Don't tell me that our blessings don't count. For this reason, at independence, yes, our founding Mzee Jomo Kenyatta spoke out about his vision for our country, spoke about the necessity of fighting poverty, disease, ignorance, etc. Issues that we know even progressive nations still grapple with. But when you look at the rate of illiteracy in Kenya at independence, and now it's grown in leaps and bounds in terms of literacy. Literacy has scaled up. When you look at governance structures in Kenya at independence through the 5 regimes, you'd appreciate that the first, second, third, fourth, and now the 5th regime, we have seen the growth, the scaling up, the proliferation of institutions, of policies and laws that are even making our democracy better. When you look at, for example, some of the tragedies that our country has gone through, you'd realize that also there are some things that are going down. For instance, look at cases such as political assassinations. There were so many in the first regime of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. We had people like Pio Gama Pinto. We had Tom Mboya being assassinated. We had John Madhieri being assassinated. A couple of guys being high-profile political assassinations. Come to the regime of Daniel Toroitich arap Moi. We still had critical political, high-level political assassinations. We had people like Robert Auko, Titus Adungosi. Had lots of these guys being assassinated. Come to Mwai Kibaki's time, we even had individuals such as Crispin Mbai being assassinated because of a negotiation that was taking place for a new constitutional order. And then when you come to the regime of Uhuru Kenyatta, we had Msando, for example, Chris Msando going down. In this fifth regime, for example, we've not had any high-level political assassination. I am saying that over this journey of 62 years, we have had many challenges. We have had progress in institutions and policies. We've also had a reduction of some of the challenges that existed at the time of independence. On that night, Zainab, when the Union Jack was being lowered, places not so far from here, when celebrations rendered the air and a hopeful nation came together in unity, our people knew that when we stand together, when we come together, our nation will only leap forward. And even as we sit here this morning, we are only moving forward, Zainab. And
I'll come back and we'll have that discussion in much more detail. I'd like us to take a very short break on this morning of the 62nd JAMHURI Day celebrations here in the country. I am with Arnold Maliba as well as Javas Bigambo, of course, who will be dissecting the state of our affairs in the country 62 years later since independence. Let's take that quick break. We'll be back. Welcome back to this special broadcast focusing on the JAMHURI Day celebrations, 62 years since Kenya gained independence, and we'll be bringing you live pictures from the Nyayo National Stadium. Of course, we have our team there, Ival Rugal, as well as David Mudhoka, who will be joining us so shortly to give us details of what is happening. Of course, last-minute preparations and the parade. And President William Ruto is expected to lead the celebrations at the Nyayo National Stadium here in Nairobi. The theme of these celebrations focused on tourism and the development of tourism in the country. And of course, we also have our teams across various parts of the country, and we'll be listening and hearing what Kenyans have to say on this day and what this national day actually means for them and where we are as a country, a pulse of the state of affairs of our nation. But also in studio, I am with Arnold Maliba, the party leader, Progress Press Alliance, as well as Javas Bigambo, who is a governance analyst and also a political communications strategist. Arnold, I'll come back to you. Of course, Javas speaks of, before we went on a break, of the progress that we have made as a nation since independence, and he talked about some of the things that have transpired over the different regimes, but he says we are in a better place. We're in a better place as a country. He says that you have a negative outlook rather than a positive outlook for the country. Do you agree?
Well, I wouldn't really take an issue with that because first of all, the country is so big and humanity is actually quite expansive that you can never see it from the same perspective at the same time. All of us see life differently depending on where we are standing at that particular point. And one of the reasons why I love to treat Javas as my younger brother is because he reported to school late. I already had reported. So we were in the same class, same dormitory. I think at some point we slept in the same cube. Life has got a funny way of always ensuring that again we end up periodically on the same the same panel. So since he came late, I've always regarded him as my form one. So he's even come here late. And like in the days of old when he was a very sickly kid in school, nowadays he's bubbly and he's making a lot of noise. So I'll not go that direction, but I'll say this. First of all, I was speaking to the very essence of a republic as to why, as a people, our founding fathers thought it important to go out and fight and ensure that we are a sovereign republic. And I spoke of the 4 pillars that are the very essence of a republic. That number 1, popular sovereignty. Number 2, we spoke about the rule of law, then accountability, and then representation. And for each, I spoke to how the people today feel. It's easy. Sorry for that.
Sorry, we'll get you some water.
It's easy to sell hope. I know it's in the morning. Hope is a good breakfast, but hope has never been a good dinner. 62 years down the line, we cannot still be approaching Kenya as a delicate concern. We have come this far because of intensity. People over time that have grown on, the people that have come ahead of us, have actually focused nation building, looked at the concept of the republic with intensity, precision, and strategic focus. There is the place of hope. No doubt. I'm even a practicing Christian. I know that of all things, hope is what remains. But I know that hope is not a strategy, and that countries are not just built on actually gaining over these issues. So we are talking about governance, and he's done governance much longer. When I was doing journalism, he was doing governance. So he will know this. He cannot show up here and become a preacher all of a sudden. He knows exactly what I am saying. So when we speak about where we are today, that are we really getting the ultimate fruit out of absolute sovereignty, the popular sovereignty that we sought? And I was giving the numbers. I was talking about what any other person feels out there. So we are at that point where it's important for us to actually have this radical surgery. We are at a point in life where, again, we can no longer keep on pretending. You know, the modern state today survives on very funny things. That number 1, they create problems. Then they sell a solution back to you at a premium. So do we really need to play around and keep on going around that? I do not think that that is actually a very wise way of doing a stock taking when you are looking back. It's 62 years old. When I speak to my younger sisters and brothers, they don't even feel this vibe about Mau Mau, people fought for independence. You know, we already have got that generation, and probably even in this newsroom, there is a generation already that doesn't feel like you're talking about Mau Mau. It feels like it's a very old concept. And that is why we must talk about the new republic. Where are we headed? Where are we going? So the progress we have made.
Does a country have a future or even a present by forgetting its
not forgetting.
past?
It's not forgetting. It's being honest about where we've come from. He's taken time and spoken about high-profile assassinations. And I need to inform him, because it seems like he has forgotten. And that the very many people that taught us clearly at Kakamega High School might not have actually pumped this into him. But the human life is supreme. The individual is supreme. In the days of old, they will assassinate each other. Politicians will assassinate each other. Today, the politicians are assassinating the people. As you talk about Pio Gamapinto and the others, we are talking about Rex Masai. We are talking about hundreds. You know, like you can go and throw around a few names that are popular. But what about the over 200 people that we lost last year? What about this year?
I know you want to question whether that data
You want to talk about the numbers. And that is the biggest problem, because we've got a lot of recorded people who went missing, and up to now, we've forgotten as a country. This year, for example, there was no bloodier Sabasaba than what happened this year. Already we actually have forgotten that. So we want to talk about and cry. Here, Javas, my brother, wants to weep. He's actually even hysterical as he speaks about Pio Gamapinto and the others and how they were killed. And he quickly wants to forget about the scores that were killed on Sabasaba this year. As in, those people are not more important. Relax. When you spoke, I didn't even move.
It's okay.
It was for a reason.
So you can wind up, then I will be able to hear from you.
So this is the point, that when we are talking about where we've come from, if we don't know where we've come from, we don't know where we are, and we therefore cannot lie to anybody that we know where we are going. And I said that, why do we have anniversaries? Anniversaries are not just about celebrating what we have actually gained. Anniversaries are also moments of reflection and stock taking. And when you came in, you know, he wasn't even around here because I didn't see him even tuned on, or rather even on his phone. We were talking about stock taking of where we've come from. What we have done, we've fairly done well. But we keep on talking about Singapore, the Asian tigers, and we say that we were even better than some of them. What is the problem with us asking, why were we at the same level or better than some of them? And now, 60 years down the line, we are aspiring to be where they are.
But Arnold,
doing that comparative analysis is no sin. It's not cosmic treason.
All right. And you know, at the back of it as well is who is to blame? But let me hear from Javas.
You see, from the discourse around the Asian tigers, we are at a point where we are talking about the African lions, and Kenya is growing to be one of them. Look, Zainab, progress is not always about feelings. It's about decisions. It's about critical decisions. It's about strategy, and he's spoken about strategy. And let's face it, it is true that we have had stormy times. And I said earlier that we have walked a very tumultuous terrain. That's true. But that does not mean that we cannot appreciate the positives that we have seen, all of us together. I say this because I believe that this country's history is not a history of lamentations alone. We have also something to celebrate. When my fellow citizens come together, they have demonstrated that in that moment of convergence, even in the face of storms and stormy times, we've always risen atop the storms like the eagle. And it's by way of that hope, that convergence of nationhood and citizenship, that we were able even to have a new constitution in place. It is because of that that we even had the pressure to repeal Section 2A of the now defunct or the repealed constitution. It is because of that convergence that we even had the temerity, the ability to even reform the death penalty in this country, because it used to be there. We should celebrate the progress we've made, because it is for our common good that some of these decisions are made. It is because of strategic decisions, for example, that at times such as this, we can celebrate having affordable housing in this country. When you look at the state of healthcare in this country in 1963, 1964, by far we've made critical improvements when you compare at how things are today in 2025. And that's why I'm saying that yes, while we appreciate the challenges we've had, we can also say, thank heavens, we've had critical moments, but also we've made positive, progressive strides. When you look at it this way, you'd realize that in the first administration of Jomo Kenyatta and the other four that followed after that, all the way to this moment, Zainab, you'd realize that the Kenyatta regime and the Moi regime could not stand criticism. People who could criticize the state always went 6 feet under.
Has that changed?
It has changed considerably, because today...
The numbers are higher.
Listen. Today, let's face it, Zainab. Look at the space of operation in 1964 to 1978. How criticism of the state used to be handled. Look at it during the Moi regime. Look at the criticism of President William Ruto, for example, today. When you call him Zakayo, he embraces it. When you call him Kasongo, he embraces it. Would Moi embrace names? Would Jomo Kenyatta embrace names, for example? My point is this, that our democracy has grown in leaps and bounds, even though challenges still abound. I say this because, as a matter of fact, it is not possible for us to be gathering on a critical day of celebration such as this and keep on tearing the fabric of our nation, saying that no good has come of this country.
All right.
We didn't say that. We said there's not been so much good out of this administration, not necessarily out of this country.
It's not just about...
said, before he came in, you would actually have heard I said that Kenya is where it is today largely by the efforts of the individual people and rarely by deliberate policy of the administration of the day.
It is individuals that form governments, it's individuals that form parties, it's individuals that form administrations.
It's governments that actually pull us down. If we were at the same level with the Asian tigers, now you're talking about African lions. Lions have been around here for a very long time, but he knows what I was saying. He ran away. This is the point, that even the administration you are trying to speak for is actually telling us they're taking us to Singapore instead of taking us to destination Kenya that Mzee Jomo Kenyatta and all the others wanted to take us to. So when I did that comparison, it wasn't for purposes of poetry. I meant that if we have not gotten there, we will only get where we want to go by asking, why did our peers get ahead of us?
My brother Maliba, 62 years after independence, we cannot continue tethering ourselves to the old vision of Jomo Kenyatta.
Which vision?
I mean,
is this old?
No, look at it this way.
Jomo gave us
look,
a republic.
No, listen.
How old is
Jomo's
vision?
It is not Jomo who gave us a republic.
Jomo
it is the founding fathers who gave us a republic.
Right? Let's talk about this.
It's not Jomo.
No, let's
it is not Jomo.
Let's summarize.
No,
let's summarize.
Maliba.
Let's summarize.
Let's have it. Zainab, let's face it. Look at it this way.
You accuse Jomo Kenyatta's vision.
So I know that we won't be able to get each other. So let's do this.
So he says Jomo's vision. Yes. I just want to actually
articulate your issue so that it can also respond.
You cannot all of a sudden, is somehow, if you listen to Javas, he sounds like William Ruto is the best thing that happened to this country after independence. That is exactly how he sounds. And then he goes even further and tries to cast aspersions on the founding fathers' vision at a time when his ancestors were running in the bush in Busia and Jomo was fighting, going to prison and doing other things. I'm talking about your great-grandfather because at least Samson I knew. He was a great man. But I don't know about Samson's father. So this is the point. When you talk about Jomo's summary of the vision, I spoke about the republic, the essence of the republic and why we wanted a republic. But then let's talk about the manifesto. If you're talking about the vision then, the three big things that he spoke about. Number one, diseases, illiteracy, and poverty, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about diseases, today, even the mechanism of solving that, as in Sha itself, is a disease. Let's not go so far. So, is Jomo's vision old in that instance? No. We're talking about illiteracy. Whereas our literacy rates are now at about 89%.
Which is progress? Which
is quite progressive. But then now you are asking, what was the end of education? Normally, what is the end of education? Are we taking care of? Because it's cyclic, it's bigger. So, we made achievement on that. Then the third one, we're talking about poverty. In the last 7 years alone, we have made more people, about 13 million, I think there's a report that is, we've brought people from middle class to upper poverty class. I don't want to call it any other word. So, if we talk about those numbers, Kenya at independence had 7 million people. When we talk about those numbers and when we want to cast aspersions, can we also behold, did Jomo have the same things that we have now?
Let's hear from Javas then.
Zainab, we appreciate the sacrifices that were made by our founding fathers. And that's true. But their vision at independence cannot remain the vision of this country 62 years later. And that's what we must appreciate. When our founding father Jomo Kenyatta spoke about fighting disease, ignorance, etc. Today, we are fighting critical issues. Today, President William Ruto is putting in place critical health infrastructure. Today, we are talking about affordable housing. Today, we're talking about education model that can be equitable. Today, we are talking about equitable opportunities in investment of infrastructure across the country. Look, we must appreciate the critical efforts of each administration because each of the 5 administrations from the first has been a building block for the progress and development of Kenya. While my brother Maliba here has got a nose-diving perspective of President William Ruto, that's personal. We must appreciate that whatever the first regime of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta did, it was built on by President Moi for 24 years, later on by President Mwai Kibaki, and later on by President Uhuru Kenyatta, and now by President William Ruto. When you look at the skewed approaches to development in this country, it was there in the first regime. When you look at the place of organized mafia, the Kiambu mafia in the first administration, today you don't talk about mafias that are eliminating people in high-profile political assassinations.
But we now have goons for hire.
Well, now let's face it. We have got goons in our politics. Those goons are not state-owned and state-sponsored. Those goons are owned, and in fact, they are sustained by certain selected politicians. And that's what we must condemn. When you look at the fabric of our democracy, Zainab, look at it how it was during the Kanu regime, for example. Even, let's say, during the regime of Daniel Toroitich arap Moi as president. The Mlolongo voting system. And how openly somebody could be rigged. Today, we have improved the architecture of our democracy and even the manner in which voting takes place in this country. Those are progressive strides that we must celebrate. So, what I'm saying is that 62 years on after independence, Zainab, we cannot be beating ourselves, cringing, saying that we have not made a stride at all.
All right. You spoke about human rights, and I think I want us to go back there. I was just pulling up a report here by Human Rights Watch, which described Kenya's human rights trajectory as having, quote-unquote, deteriorated over the past 1 year. That is since 2024. Citing heavy-handed crackdowns on nationwide protests, especially as what was witnessed during the 2024 protests here in Nairobi and across other parts of the country. Harassment, intimidation, arrests and the arrests of protest leaders, civil society groups, and that speaks to something. When you talk about progress, that speaks to
I agree.
A deterioration.
I agree to this extent, that human rights cannot be given a linear perspective. We have got a vertical perspective to human rights. We have got a horizontal perspective to human rights. We have got a lateral perspective to human rights.
Then,
and
what does the Constitution say? Let's base it on the Constitution. This
the Bill of Rights,
diagonal and whatever is not in the Constitution.
It's there. You know, it's a question of interpretation of the Constitution.
Let's go back to it.
As a matter of fact, when you look at the rights sheltered within the Bill of Rights, they are numerous. Matters health, matters education, all these are rights, matters freedom of movement. Today, media are more free than they were, for example, under the regime of Daniel Toroitich arap Moi or even Jomo Kenyatta.
Not true.
No, that's a matter of fact.
No, not true.
We could not sit in a place such as this
regime,
to engage in critical discourse about our nation state
and revenue so that then they can collapse.
No.
This administration has actually done that.
No,
so
you
proceed.
see, I think your position is just antithetical to the position of the administration and how it is.
We are addressing your point on media freedom, not me.
No, yes.
Media freedom, and
you have cited Human Rights Watch. It is a critical human rights institution, and it has given a perspective. That perspective is not just is actually blanket, which is not right. Look, when it says that human rights have deteriorated in this country, they have not gone to the specific of what particular rights have deteriorated. Are they talking about the freedom of opinion, speech, and thought that is also enshrined in the Constitution? Yes, I feel bad when any single citizen loses their lives. I feel bad when any person, private or public, curtails the rights of any citizen or even institution.
But you know, it is not just the human rights.
That must be condemned. And in fact, when it comes to any violations of human rights, we then speak about reparations. And that is why, for any violation of any right, there must be the corresponding responsibility of the duty bearers to grant reparations.
Reparations without accountability?
Accountability is very important, and that's why reparations actually cannot be material without accountability.
All right, I want you to hold on to that thought. I'll come back to you, Arnold. We have to take yet another break. Those are live pictures from the Nyayo National Stadium. The stadium dotted with the national colors there, green, red, black. You can see white, and of course leaders already streaming there. Hundreds of Kenyans who've already have taken their seats at the stadium. Nyayo National Stadium here in the capital, Nairobi. We'll be linking up with our team from the ground in a moment. We have to take a short break. We'll be back and giving you details of what is transpiring. Stay with us.